Zach French is a bar-certified attorney, and nothing expressed by Zach during Web3 with me shall be considered legal advice. All the opinions expressed by Zach and his guests are solely their own opinions. All content in Web3 with me is for informational purposes only. Zach and his podcast guests may maintain positions in the securities discussed during Web3 with me.
Welcome to a special edition of Web3 with me with a former guest and dear friend, Brian Zwerner. We've been working on something pretty amazing, and Brian is seeing his vision come to life. So we wanted to hop back on the mic to tell you all about We Studio. Brian, thanks for coming back on.
Thanks for having me, Zach. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've been on the pod together, but we have been in constant contact, always talking about Web3 and about what We Studio is. So maybe we can start with a little bit of an explanation of the vision behind We Studio, why you're doing it, and the community that you expect to serve here in Atlanta, as you see my special background.
Fantastic. Yeah, we've been in the kitchen and we've been cooking up something nice, and it's finally come out of the oven and ready to share with your audience. So I'm excited for that. You know, look, the roots of We Studio go back, a long time for me. Giving back to help people that could use a boost has been something that has been embedded in my DNA since I was a young kid. Zach, we've talked a little bit about, but probably haven't covered as much of my personal history. And happy to share that here on this show. My family is Eastern European Jews who were in Poland at the time of World War II. Only through the grace of some wonderful non-Jewish folks in Poland and in Germany did my family make it through World War II, through the Holocaust, and be in a position to come to the United States. My mom was born in Frankfurt, Germany, in a displaced persons camp. My family came to the U.S. after my mother was born, when my mother was an infant. Lived in the Metro New York area. My grandfather ran a tiny little shoe shop in Harlem. That was my maternal grandfather. My paternal grandfather ran a little bakery, Jewish bakery in Sheepshead Bay at the end of Brooklyn. They lived, I guess, some version of the American dream as they escaped Europe. They built a better life for themselves and their kids. My parents were the first in their families, both the oldest children, to go through college. If not for all the help that they received in Europe, getting out of Europe and coming to the United States, getting established here, there's just no way that, first of all, the family would have made it even, and that we would have been in a position for me to, be born here in the United States as the first in the Grossman side of my family's lineage. And so, helping people who are in a position that you're in a position to help is something that's been instilled in me since I was very, very young. And that's impacted me in all kinds of different ways throughout the course of my 50-year life.
Yeah, I knew this episode would get personal, not only because of where we come from, but I share a similar history to that. My grandmother, who recently passed, was on the last sponsored boat out of Germany over to the United States, where they settled in Houston and also had a retail shop. So yeah, it's embedded because of that experience in, I think, Jewish culture. But I also see it just in general, the way that Jews congregate. We have a concept called tzedakah, right? Which is the concept of giving back. My son does not have a piggy bank. He has a tzedakah box, right? So that he knows whenever he can find an extra coin that he can put it in a tzedakah box. And when we fill it up, we can give it to somebody who needs it more. And it's a wonderful thing about the culture. And I'm glad to see it proliferating with We Studios.
Yeah, look, my grandparents had a much tougher road getting out of Europe. My mom's mother and her sister and her mother, my great grandmother, were hidden away in a story very similar to the Anne Frank story by a German Christian family throughout the entirety of the war, with great personal risk to the family that hid them. They were incredibly lucky to make it through. She had a very large family. None of the rest of them made it out of Europe. My mother's father and his brother and his father, my great grandfather, were shoe cobblers. They were in Schindler's factory from the Schindler List movie. That's how they survived the war. They were in a Polish factory and run by Oskar Schindler, and they were on Schindler's List. You can see their names on the list now. And so, if not for that, there's no, obviously, there would never have been my mom, and I never would have made it here. And so, that was just very instilled in me, giving back, helping people who need help. And that's really the underpinning of the why of why We Studio is coming about today.
Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful to take the experience like that and realize how lucky we are just to be here, right? To be born here, to have the opportunities, and now to pass that on. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about We Studios. I obviously know a little bit of the background, having worked with you on it a little bit, but I'd love for the audience to understand exactly what it is and exactly what you're trying to accomplish with it.
Yeah, We Studio is a nonprofit entity, a Georgia not-for-profit corporation that has applied for and is waiting for the IRS to approve our 501c3 status, which, for anybody who doesn't know, can take up to a year, unfortunately. But that application went in late last year, so we're just kind of waiting our turn in the pile to get reviewed and approved by the IRS. So it's a Georgia not-for-profit entity. And we will take donations from corporations, and there'll be ways for individuals to contribute as well. And all of that money will go into a nonprofit and be governed by the rules that govern nonprofits, which, for people who aren't aware, limit how we can use that money to only the purpose that's defined for our entity, and limit significantly the amount of money that can go out the door to people. So no one's getting rich off of this. This is not a fund. This is not a for-profit company. It's all of this is about the benefit that we can deliver, and that benefit's going to diverse individuals, initially defined as Black, Latinx, and women founders here in Atlanta, who are building in Web3. We felt very passionate about the ability to build a community and all the amazing tools that Web3 allows for community building. And we will utilize all of them. We plan to progressively introduce those tools to our nonprofit entity over the course of the next year or two. And we'll bring in all that funding, and it'll all go out as grants. So we want to work with amazing founders who, struggle to find that friends and family round. And we're going to replace that friends and family capital for them with $200,000 in non-dilutive grant money. And we're going to help them with all the resources they need to get their products from idea to a live product and customer.
So why is it that they can't just go raise a traditional family and friends round or a seed round with typical VCs?
Yeah, if you go back and listen to our first Web3 with Me podcast, you'll get a lot more of the details of the venture group I run here in Atlanta that I have for the last 4 years, called Beyond the Game Network. Beyond the Game is a group of about 30 former pro athletes, mostly NFL players, and we invest in sports and media and entertainment and video gaming and Web3 consumer products and fitness and health and wellness. Been doing that for about 4 years and made over 20 investments. And, across that, we've been a big part of the Atlanta tech ecosystem. We've worked with hundreds of founders here. We know all the couple dozen venture firms and all the big ecosystem players. We spent a lot of time with a couple of wonderful nonprofits here, Goody Nation and the Russell Center, supporting their founders. And what we've seen from all of this, Zach, is that if you aren't the kind of founder who has that right network, who went to the right colleges that are known for the tech space, who maybe worked at some of the big tech giants like a Google or an Apple, you don't have that right network to launch your business, then your friends and family capital round is near impossible. The odds of you having a rich uncle who can fund what you're doing, or having worked with the kind of people who have accumulated the kind of wealth where they can write those very early checks that only your closest friends and family are going to write to you when it's just an idea and there's absolutely no proof or traction. That was the biggest problem that we identified in working with founders here in Atlanta, especially the diverse founders. And that's the place we wanted to tackle.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's access, right? Just to people with that kind of, and then the fact, one of the things that I know we discussed early on was a lot of these people are building already, and they're already accumulating big balances, debt balances, right? And so when they do go to raise, if they are able to raise 50,000, that actually just puts them maybe in the black, barely, right? Like they're starting from zero with that, whereas they need upwards of $100,000 or $200,000 to actually have some operating capital to keep this business going, which I found was just such a great insight.
Yeah, a lot of the times we've seen people who, diverse founders here in Atlanta and elsewhere who manage to win a pitch competition or get access to one of the grant programs or maybe find a local angel that's willing to write a check. The challenge is, like you said, they haven't paid the lawyers, they haven't paid the dev shop, they owe money to the marketing team, they owe money to their employees. The hole is already dug, by spending 6, 12, 18 months trying to do this without the same resources, that a founder coming graduating out of Stanford or walking out of Apple is going to have. And so, when you try to do it that way, I commend the effort. It's a fantastic effort, and it's not something I would tell people not to do. It's just so much harder when you're constantly behind that eight ball, when you're constantly, staring at a zero in the checking account, and knowing that you owe people money for work that's already been done or haven't been able to pay yourself anything for 6, 12, 18, 24 months. It's just so much harder. We want to alleviate that funding stress for these diverse founders. We want to give them the money to know that they can really get from that very first of ideas phase to a live product with live customers. And we think $200,000 grants is going to give them the chance to really do that. If you can't make something work with 200 grand, you're probably not in the right space.
Well, that's good. I mean, look, the return profiles that are necessary for a nonprofit giving a grant versus a venture capitalist who has to earn a certain return in order to keep his fund afloat are totally different, right? And like you're really plugging that need in, and I find that just amazing. So
when we first started with the idea for the venture studio, and we've been working on this, Zach, for 3 years, since early 2020, and we started researching the other for-profit venture studios, and there are a lot of wonderful ones out there. But they're taking a lot of risk. As an investor, you're taking a lot of risk giving money to somebody who just has an idea with no customers, no traction, and no built product. And so, to justify the risk that they're taking, they take back a huge chunk of the founder's company, of the founder's equity, 20, 30, 50% of the company. We wanted to create something at We Studio that was going to help people. That felt like payday lending to me. That felt predatory, like taking advantage of the fact that a founder has no network and is willing to give up a quarter or a half of their company for that early money. I didn't want to do that. That didn't feel like helping. That felt like something different. And so, we reset this as the idea of a nonprofit and started really working on this in earnest, around this time last year, because we felt like this was the way to do it, where you'd still leave the founders in control of their company.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's they're coming in there kind of already at a disadvantage, or in a hole, right? Maybe a shallow hole at this point, but like, why dig a deeper one? They can always have that opportunity once they leverage something like We Studio grants to go work with a venture studio when it's more of a level playing field. But at the point that they are currently at, it does not make sense, which is a very profound point. So I guess that's one aspect, right? We maybe it would be helpful for you to kind of explain the other aspects of how We Studio is going to be supporting these founders, and then talk about all the influential people who have put their time and effort into helping you grow this, joining the board and stuff like that.
You bet. I'll take the first part first. So the other thing we learned working with these early stage diverse founders here in Atlanta was when they did manage to get some cash in the bank, if you didn't have the right network to raise the money, then you probably don't have the right network of technology development firms and lawyers and digital marketing teams and HR groups and financial modelers. You don't, if you don't have that first network of friends and family, if you're not embedded in the tech ecosystem from either where you worked or where you went to school, then the odds are you probably don't have those right vendor relationships. And those are critical. You need to use those to fill the holes in your founding team. Not every founder is going to have, no founder is going to have every skill set needed to launch their company. They're going to have to hire people or hire vendors. And what we saw over and over again with these diverse founders in Atlanta was they just ended up with the wrong vendors. And they ended up massively overpaying for the technology that they wanted to build and didn't get what they wanted, or they'd hire a marketing firm who promised them a $2 acquisition cost or CAC, and they end up spending $22 per user. Or they end up, overspending on a lawyer, over lawyering the documents too early in the stage of the business, and the money just goes poof, it just disappears. And so that's another key part of this studio model is we'll be able to go out and negotiate bulk rates. We'll be able to vet the vendors and bring the best in class service. And those vendors will know that when they work with We Studio, they're not just working with one client one time and it's a one-time deal and they need to price it that way. They'll know that if they do a good job, they could be working with 5, 10, eventually more founders every year. And they can price it at a much lower margin because of that. And so that is a key part of how we're going to help these founders to be really, really successful. We're going to also surround them in a big, passionate bear hug with wonderful mentors and advisors. We started building out that team, and I appreciate, Zach, that you're part of that group. As you said, we've got amazing people who are really committed to diverse builders in Atlanta on our board of directors. So our board is 4 people, myself, plus Christy Brown. Christy is a multi-time founder here in Atlanta, been in the markets here for over 20 years. She ran a venture studio program for Loeb Ventures out of New York. She ran their Atlanta arm for a few years. And in the last year, she ran Launchpad 2X, a women support for entrepreneurs nonprofit. So she's the triple threat. She's built, she's invested, and she's run a nonprofit. So she is ideal. Our unofficial home for the for We Studio is the Atlanta Blockchain Center, and I'm blessed to have. Thank you. There you go, right there on the shirt. Blessed to have Marlon Williams, who is our one of our board members. He is the founder of the Atlanta Blockchain Center. Just an amazing co-working and event space. They run here in Atlanta that opened last year. They run their own program, pre-accelerator program called the Immutable Program, where I think both of us are mentors and advisors to. So just a great place to meet founders. Marlon's very passionate about helping builders and specifically diverse builders here in Atlanta. And then our 4th board member is Asante Bradford, who works for the state of Georgia in their economic development area. He's been there for a long time. And his role for the last decade has been, bringing entertainment companies to the state of Georgia, mostly Atlanta, but film and TV, music, video games, any kind of entertainment companies. He's got fantastic relationships that should be hugely helpful. And he's very passionate about building this, Georgia and specifically the Atlanta ecosystem here. And so I'm really excited about that. We have some wonderful people like yourself who have agreed to be on the mentor team and on the selection team, working with founders. We're just so excited by the passion and excitement that we've seen from people all around the community.
Sounds like a no-brainer. I want to dig a little bit deeper, though. I want to understand the answers to 2 questions. Why Atlanta and why Web3 only?
Yeah, those are fair questions. So Atlanta's easy. I'm here, you're here. We've got a wonderful community here. I think, look, Atlanta to me is, I spent a lot of time investing and traveling to other tech ecosystems around the country, San Fran, LA, Austin, New York, and so on. There is just no more diverse tech ecosystem than Atlanta. I'll take the Pepsi challenge with this sucker with anybody.
Agreed.
Show me another city where you can go into and see as much diversity in the room as what you see here in Atlanta on a consistent basis. It just doesn't exist anywhere else. I've never seen anything close. And we have wonderful nonprofits that have already been set up in this space, that have been successful, that have delivered in the Goodie Nation and the Russell Center for their constituents. We feel like we're really plugged into that. So that's first and foremost. We are diverse here. There is a culture of supporting diversity and diverse founders. And then obviously Atlanta has all the advantages of a tech ecosystem from, 2 big things. We've got huge Fortune 100 companies, Coca-Cola, UPS, Home Depot, and on and on. And we've got an amazing university system all in close contact here. Everything from, Georgia Tech to the HBCUs to Georgia State, Kennesaw State, University of Georgia, only an hour or so away. I mean, just tons and tons of wonderful colleges putting out such great engineering talent, marketing talent, founder talent. So Atlanta to me is a no-brainer.
Yeah, I think before we move on to why Web3, one of the things that I always share about why I love Atlanta Blockchain Center so much is that every time I go there, 80% of the people are people of color and they're developers. Tell me where you can go in the United States and find that. That
Oh
is
no,
my
man! I went to some of a Miami Tech Week. They were talking about diversity, and it was still mostly white dudes in the room. And and it just isn't like that here in Atlanta, and it never will be. And that's a big part of it. Now, the why Web3 is a good question. Look, as I launched this entity this week, a lot of people in my network were pushing back. Why am I just doing Web3? Why just Web3? You should do all tech, all founders. And look, for me, this decision is about the future. It's about the timing is good, not bad. When things are disrupted in the Web3 market, that's the time to build. I fully believe that Web3 is here and it's here to stay. I think, just like Web 1, and I've said this many other places before, if you didn't have a website, you tried to say we don't need to go on the web back in 2000, you're out of business or you gave up and did it. And the same thing happened a decade later with social media. Companies that said, that's just a fad. It's not important. I don't need to be on Facebook and Instagram and so on and so on. They've all come to believe that that's critical to their business. And I think Web3 is just the next evolution of the internet. Every company will have a Web3 embedded into their strategy. And building today is exactly the right time to build. And the market is still young enough where there's an opportunity for this market, the Web3 ecosystem, to be built with diversity at the core. It doesn't have to look like Web 1 and Web 2, which were dominated by white and Asian males. It doesn't have to. It's still early enough where the game-changing companies of the next decade are going to get built now. They weren't built 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You don't have to compete directly with Google and Apple in Web3. There's all kinds of opportunity here. Plug that in on one side, and on the other side, the things that we've seen in community building in Web3, that was what inspired us to make this the core focus. Everything from groups coming together to buy the U.S. Constitution, to Krause House trying to buy a basketball team, LinksDAO buying a golf course, Seed Club funding new startups, all done using these Web3 primitives and technologies, building community in this way. It just felt like the right answer to me. And while I understand there's risk and Web3 is going to be messy and disrupted for the next year or two at least, I think the risks are far outweighed by the rewards, which are just so big if we get this right now.
I may be a bit biased, but I think it's the right space to be building in. I have to say, listen. The purpose of my show is to help people understand how their brands can overcome this perception problem that Web3 and crypto is all about scams. And it's really hard when you have people like SBF who are in the spotlight testifying in front of Congress come out to be a complete fraud. But what will help is stories like We Studio. Right? Because you're going to leverage, you're not only going to be funding founders or providing grants to founders who are building in Web3, you're going to be using some aspects of Web3 to help make it somewhat decentralized as well over time, which I find very valuable. Do you want to touch at all on the Web3 aspects of the studio?
Absolutely. But, the one thing I'll add first is just that I think it's really important for this type of a studio model to have some differentiation. If we just did any technology from marketing tech to finance to entertainment to this to that to the other thing, we would never really develop that muscle and brain power that I want to bring. I want to bring real experts together, and I want to bring people that can really move the needle. And I think by being concentrated and focused in an area, we've got a better chance of having companies that come out successful. Now, to the Web3 tools, look, if we could have gone straight up decentralized day one, man, I would have done it. I would love to try that. I just don't think that it's ready today for that. I don't think that the corporate partners that we want and need are familiar enough with those tools today. And I don't want to push that into something that's not ready yet. But we're going to bring that ethos to it. And look, over time, we will build a community of supporters, both corporations and individuals and venture funds and all of the vendors, the technology shops and law firms and so on. We'll build this community and we'll give the community the ability to make decisions. Right now, we're starting with founders that are Black, Latinx, and women. If the community wants to define diversity in a more broad fashion, I'm totally good with that. We'll let the community decide that. We're only going to allow founders who are based here in Atlanta or are going to move here. We want to be able to see them, to get in a room with them, and to work with them. Down the road, if we wanted to have We Studio chapters in other cities or allow some type of remote work, I'm open to it. I don't love it, but if that's what the community wants and that's what people want to do, then I'm okay with it, and we'll make that happen. But longer term, really where I want it to go, man, it's going to be exciting when we're ready to have a situation where founders apply, they get vetted by our team, they come to a live in-person event here in Atlanta, they pitch their company and their ideas and their passion for the sector, and then the community decides which founders that we let into this program. And then the community will be even more vested in trying to help those founders to be successful. So we're going to get there. It might take a year or two or something on that order of magnitude, but we are going to get to the point where the community is going to decide what kind of founders we want and specifically pick those founders and be able to support them all the way from their idea to their launch. And that's the ethos that we'll go on and build towards here at We Studio.
Yeah, I mean, look, it brings up a term that I use often on this show, which I consider the practical approach to Web3 in general, even if it's not a venture studio, just any startup, which is you got to progressively decentralize, right? You got to find some product market fit. And in this case, part of your product market fit is finding corporate sponsors who will help fund it, right? It's not just finding good founders, right? Like you have to have the capital to be able to fund this stuff. And right now we're still in the teaching phase, right? And we're still overcoming a lot of these perspective issues, but we will get there. I know we will. And then you can start to slowly hand back some of the decision-making authority to the community, because you got to have the visionaries too. And one of the beautiful things about this is the flywheel that it creates, right? As you fund more founders and those founders are successful, they come back and they want to give back to We Studio, right? Not necessarily even financial, right? Like that'd be great, but like also just mentorship and helping people that need someone to talk to that want to understand the process, right? I think it's a beautiful.
That's going to be at the core of what we do. And look, we didn't want to start with all this DAO and NFT and token lingo and turn off a broad, swath of the people who may not believe in those things or haven't understood them yet or seen how that they can work. We wanted to create this in a way that was very comfortable for anyone to get involved, because we feel like this has, mass appeal and mass opportunities. For companies that come in as founding partners, they'll have the ability to shape the mission of WeDAO. They'll come on and get offered a board seat. They'll be able to join us on the board of directors with one of their employees. They'll have the opportunity to meet with these diverse founders throughout the application process and as they come into the studio, allowing for more diversity to their own businesses. They'll have the chance to partner with these founders, whether they're in the studio or just people that we meet along the way. They'll get access to potentially bringing those new ideas coming from diverse builders into their own big businesses. And they'll have the first look at doing that. So, not only will the corporate partners be helping, and, we're looking for corporate partners that have a true commitment to helping and funding diverse builders. And we're looking for corporate partners that are serious about Atlanta, that are either headquartered here or have a serious presence here. If you're not in Atlanta, frankly, I don't need you on the founding partner team. I want people that can participate. Yeah. I want people that can host our founders, that can send their employees to be mentors and meet with these founders, that are going to be open to partnerships with these founders once they have live products. That's who I want on our corporate, partner team. Yeah. I want those kind of companies that are really committed to the same core ethos that we have around supporting diverse builders and supporting, doing that here in Atlanta.
Yeah, and with that focus in Atlanta, we're going to build a stronger knit community as well, because people are passionate about the city they live in, right? And you need to find people that exhibit that passion so that people understand that our community is here, it's in the city. And look, like you said, that doesn't mean that we're going to be only in Atlanta forever. But over time, we'll build a much stronger community by learning from what's in this city, right? And who supports.
Well, and the city is really moving fast to support tech. Our new mayor he's only been in office for a relatively short time, and I have seen him in person at like 10 different tech events over the course of the last year. He is committed to the technology industry. He brought on a wonderful individual Donnie Beamer as his tech czar, is what I call him, head of technology for the city to encourage startups and big companies in the tech space and venture investors and angel investing. They have big dreams of what they can do to really push this forward, and it's amazing to see the support coming from at the government level to really make things happen, and then put that alongside all the wonderful co-working places like Atlanta Tech Village and ATDC down by Georgia Tech, and the nonprofits that I mentioned earlier, Russell Center, Goody Nation, and what we're doing, the Atlanta Blockchain Center. I mean, there's just so many great things happening in the Atlanta tech ecosystem, and we find that the founders, the investors, the people at the big tech companies, they're all proud to be part of it, and they're all proud to to sing the praises of the city of Atlanta and the opportunities here to anyone that'll listen.
Yeah, I think one of the things that keeps coming to mind as we talk about Atlanta is largely seen as like an epicenter for culture, for hip hop culture, now for entertainment culture writ large. And I mean, what is Web3 if not bringing together brand and culture, right? So I'm excited to see this.
That's one of the reasons it's great to have Asante Bradford on our board of directors. Asante's been right at the intersection of that, working with movie companies, TV studios, music labels, and video game companies to bring them here to Georgia, to the state. He works for the state, not the city, but obviously most of those folks have found their way to city of Atlanta or somewhere in the surrounding areas, and so it's amazing to have him as a part of this, and we're excited. Doesn't any founders who are looking to build in Web3 for us can mean anything from that kind of consumer entertainment to collectibles, to art, to infrastructure and technology tools, to payments and payment rails, to broader metaverse. We define Web3 in a very, very broad way. And we do it deliberately. It'll have a much wider remit than what we invest in out of the Beyond the Game Network group, which is focused in kind of sports and entertainment and fitness. It's wonderful if some of those founders want to find their way over to We Studio, and obviously I've got a lot of personal background and knowledge and relationships in those space. But we filled in with folks on the board and in the advisory crew that have experience across all those other areas of Web3, and we really see this very, very broadly.
Yeah, that's something I've been. It's been an exercise I've been taking a part in recently, which is kind of zooming out a little bit. And I think Web3 has, and rightfully so, been connected to everything related to blockchain for a long time. But like really the idea behind Web3 is that it's the third iteration of the web, right? And it just so happens that blockchain is what made that possible. But there's other aspects of technology that are developing at a rapid pace that are going to help facilitate that ownership level, that identity level that the blockchain permits, which is AI, right? That's just one of the most interesting things right now. I think everybody's talking about Midjourney and Chat GPT and OpenAI and all these wonderful tools, and they'll be able to help people become creators in this space and own what they do a lot better than they were able to, even 3-4 months ago. Right.
Hey, look, if we were going for all the buzziness, we could have done Web3 and AI startups. Yeah. That was not really a consideration for us. But, I think we'll see the same thing happening in the AI space as we will with Web3. These will just become parts of successful businesses. Nike, you don't call Nike a Web 2 business, but they have a massive social media presence. You don't call the NBA a Web 2 business, but they have enormous interaction on their social channels with their fans. And I think the same thing will happen with both Web 3 tools and primitives and with AI tools. They'll just be the best companies, the companies that lead the next decade or two, will embrace these tools and utilize them for both, in the case of Web 3, for bringing their communities closer, for engaging their customers or fan base, whatever it may be. And then the same thing with AI. AI is just going to be another set of tools in the toolkit that's going to allow you to build your business better, faster, and cheaper. And I think those will be we'll be at the cutting edge of trying to help our founders use those tools. We've got a number of people with some experience in there. And we'll be looking to bring those tools to our founders and encouraging our founders to try them, see where they can use them and see how they can help their businesses.
Yeah, exactly. Like you heard it here. We talk about it all the time on this show and, on social media. Stop limiting yourself to saying you're a Web3 business. You're a business first, right?
Right.
Web3 just might happen to make your business better, right? A certain technology around Web3. I love that. I'm super excited for We Studio, and I can't wait to see it grow. If you are a person who works at a corporation that has a mission to support diverse founders, please reach out to Brian.
Hit me up. I'm available. Yeah, Brian at westudio.us. Go on our website. Hit me up on Twitter or LinkedIn, anywhere. I'm always open to hear from people. We're looking for, like I said, companies that are committed to supporting diverse builders and committed to Atlanta. If you're involved in Web3 in some capacity, or your company's already gotten involved there, that's a plus, but it's not required.
Exactly. And we can come educate as well. So if you need help understanding why Web3 is so powerful, both of us and the many people that are a part of this founding team, we can help. We talk about it a lot. So I wanted to shift gears, unless there's any closing thoughts you had on We Studio, and kind of get an update from you writ large on what your participation in Web3.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's been an interesting market time. Fortunately, I had no direct dealings with anyone at FTX. I had no money there. I hadn't, really come into contact with them or considered investing in them. We don't really do financial technology at Beyond the Game. It's a terrible thing for the market. I feel bad for all the people that did have dealings with them and have to deal with all the mess that comes off the back of it. I don't see it as an indictment of crypto in general. I think it's much more in the vein of, Enron and Bernie Madoff and crime and fraud, as opposed to, what tools they happen to use for crime and fraud. Enron didn't end the energy industry, and Madoff didn't kill hell hedge funds. These were just bad people doing bad things. And, based on the allegations from the U.S. government, that's what was happening here. We'll see how it plays out in the court system, but that appears to be the case. And that's kind of how I view it. I mean, it's sad for all of the people that had funds there and all the companies that were doing business with them and all the people who worked there and had nothing to do with whatever was going on the fraud side. Overall, it's obviously disrupted the markets. It's changed the price of a lot of tokens. It's moved a lot of pieces around on the board. But I don't think it's changed anything. This is the first time in a crypto market price crash that people aren't really asking the question, is Bitcoin going to make it? Okay, fine. There may be some coins that were more directly affected by FTX that have existential threats at this point. I get that, but the overall market as a whole is it's just too big to fail at this point. It's not going anywhere. Prices will move. They'll go up. They'll go down. They'll go sideways. But I think the market is here to stay. I think we're going to see the benefits of the billions and billions of dollars in capital that have been invested in wildly cool, fun, amazing startups over the last 2 years. New products that are becoming market in 2023, and in gaming and in music and in collectibles and in sports that are just going to blow people's mind. A lot of the past build was about financial products and financial gain. Buying a token because you thought it would go up, and staking a token because you wanted to earn a high yield. These were financial in nature. We've only seen a few real serious, mass market products that have been about something other than just making money. So Rare and Top Shot and some of the others that have reached some serious scale. I think we're going to see a lot more of that in 2023 and 2024.
So I guess I want to cover both sides because, Brian, I know you are also in media, right? You've got some pretty cool videos out there, and you're a writer as well, talking about the space. So I'd love to get your perspective. From the media perspective, what are you seeing? And I also want to know about your perspective as a VC investor, what kind of deals you're seeing, how you're advising your founders to weather this, winter that we're in and stuff like that. Yeah. So feel free to start wherever you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, on the media side, certainly people who were already skeptical can now wag their finger and go, I told you so. This is all a scam. And that is what it is. I'm not here to try to convince those people. I'm not going to spend my time on that. I think people are still very interested and curious. I think the skeptical people have moved further to the skeptical side and are probably going to write this off for a while longer. And that's great. That means more room for the people who are seriously committed and aren't just checking it out as tourists. I think, look, I think people are more interested in learning about the space now. I think it, as even bad news is good news, so to speak, and that it brought more eyeballs to the sector and more attention in a way that wasn't necessarily positive, but it did bring more people into wanting to learn more and and being less quick to just sort of jump on the thing that's going up in price and more looking to dig and understand at a more deeper level. So I think that's been helpful from that perspective. On the investment side, it's a tough market out there, and not just for Web3 startups, for any tech startups. Yes, there's a lot of VC money that's been raised. There is a lot of dry powder, but the standard for getting funding in today's environment here in January of 2023 is tough. I mean, you need to be showing real progress that is consistent with whatever level of capital raise, whether it's your seed round, your A or B, so on and so on. You need to be crushing your metrics. You need to have everything in line. You need to have the right team, the right idea, and the right early customer traction, or you're not getting funded. And we're seeing a lot more companies having to turn to insider rounds or bridge rounds to try to give them a little bit more oxygen to get them to the point where they can hit those metrics and are ready for a legitimate next funding round. And we're seeing a lot of companies that are just being forced to tighten the belt, cut staff, cut programs, cut back to the core of whatever their core product may be, and put themselves in a position where they can extend runway. 12 months is great. 24 months is better. Some people are out there pushing longer. I don't personally think that's necessary. I'm generally more constructive on the macro environment than most. I think by the second half of this year, things will be moving in a better direction. I feel like inflation is on its way to being under control. I'm hopeful that we've seen the lows in the tech stocks and some of the more volatile stock space. I recognize there's a lot of risk to that macro call, but that's my macro call.
Yeah. So I guess, if I was a founder in your portfolio and I came to you and said, Brian, I'm hearing that, while there's capital out there, like I'm not, like, I've got to like hit my metrics and I've got to extend it for a longer periods of time. What's some like generalized advice that you might have for those founders in order to make it last a little bit longer and in weather?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you got to focus on the most important thing. You got to really have a good understanding of what investors need in your particular market or type of company in order to write that check. And then you've got to use all your resources in a hyper-focused way to get to that, whether that's a certain number of users or a certain amount of revenue, or if you have revenue, but it's, the margins aren't where they need to be. You need to figure out what that thing is that's going to get you over the hump with a very skeptical investor base. With a very cautious investor base. And you need to really zero in on, what is that most important thing and how do I utilize all my resources? How do I cut the distractions? Maybe I used to go to conferences. Maybe I used to spend a lot of time as a podcast guest or writing a newsletter or playing around on Twitter trying to get stuff. Forget all that, right? Hyper focus on, unless that's driving to your core metric, you need to be focused on the most important things and you need to cut those distractions. If you had one product that's working and two or three that didn't, forget them, get rid of them, cut them, back burner them, whatever it may be, save the money, and marshal your resources towards whatever's going to get you to the point where you can, be in a position where funding is going to be easy. And figure out, understand what that means, get in touch with some of the VCs that, and get that advice from people at that next level of funding or whatever round that may be for your company. And just all your resources have to go there. You just can't afford to be scattered in any way.
I love that. I mean, if we could summarize that in one word, I'd say focus, right?
100%.
Focus on what are those core metrics that are important. There's a ton
and like one or two, not 20.
Right.
Really, really drive in on the thing that is gonna make your company investable. If you have a business that has a way to get to cash flow positive, look, that's not always the case. Depends on stage and type of business and everything else. If that's a possibility, then you're in a much better position. You don't need to, beg investors for money. They'll find you once you're cash flow positive and growing.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're lucky enough to be in a situation where that makes sense for your business.
Yeah.
I get that doesn't apply to everybody.
Yeah, I think too, just drilling in on the focus side, like think about what areas of your business need more support, right? Right now in this time, it's probably something along the lines of maybe product and engineering needs a little bit more support than sales and marketing. Go out and build the thing, and know which one of those departments is going to help drive the metrics that your investors are recommending.
Yeah, and look, most of these metrics are going to be around number of customers, customer usage and retention, revenue, and things of those natures. And so, yeah, if it's your product that needs to be improved, great. If it's more or the right types of customers, then go get them. But you've got to find a way to utilize whatever resources you have access to, and you have to be willing to make the tough decisions. If you've hired people that aren't focused on those missions, if you got a little distracted when easy money was available with multiple things out there that weren't driving towards your core business, you have to make the tough decisions, and you have to put yourself in a place where you're not dependent, where your business is going to go out of business because you can't get funding from outside sources. You just can't count on that right now.
Well, thank you for that.
Not unless you're crushing it in every way.
Yeah, right. Not unless you're an anomaly and you're just crushing everything. But thank you for that. I think that'll be helpful. I know that I have a lot of my audience is founders. A lot of my guests are founders that come on here, and they appreciate that. They want to get inside the mind of their investors, and so that's super helpful for them. We're nearing the top of the hour, and usually I would have 2 closing questions, but you've already answered those because you're a repeat guest. But I do want to focus on how your opinions for the future and the trends you are seeing, that you are writing about, that you're reporting on through your videos, have changed since the last time we came on. And for the audience context here, it's been about 4 or 5 months, right? The last time you came on.
That's an eternity. Crypto is dog years,
Yeah.
right? So 4 or 5 months can feel like 4 to 5 years in this space. I mean, obviously, last time I was on was before, the real downturn in the markets, before the FTX debacle was announced. I mean, there was a lot of change in that period of time, that's for sure. Look, I think what I'm looking forward to this year is that the majority of the things that have been built in crypto, as I said earlier, have been kind of financial in nature. Buy this thing because it's going to go up in price. Stake or invest your tokens for a yield. Most of the tools that have been built have been around exchanges and trading tools and investing tools. We've seen a few things that have not been that have broken out. I've seen, hundreds of thousands or even millions of users. I think that's what we're going to see much more of in the coming time. I think there's an understanding that the user experience for Web3 and crypto on mobile phone is terrible today. Whether that's better apps getting built, better wallets, better browsers that embed these things, or whether it's whole new phones like the Solana phone that is hopefully still coming out at some point this year, or whether it's just Apple and Google finally accepting that they want to have a bigger role in the future of these areas. I think we're going to see some of those mobile experiences really improve and change, and allow people to get more involved in this space that aren't technically as savvy or as comfortable. I think those will be important trends this year, and I'm hopeful. I wrote about this, and I will continue to. I'm hopeful we're going to see, as a result of FTX pushing things. I'm hopeful we're going to see some regulatory clarity this year, whether that comes from SEC actions or SEC guidance, or whether that comes from Congress. I'm hopeful we're going to see some moves. I think the first and most important thing is around crypto custody. The average consumer does not know the difference between a Fidelity and a Schwab account and a Coinbase account. They think those things are the same and protected by the same protections that you get when you open an account at Fidelity or Schwab to buy stocks, or places like Robinhood, who offer both stock and crypto trading in their core infrastructure. So I think that's a key area, and I think stable coins is just another area where it's just on our regulatory environment, whether it's the CFTC or SEC or Congress, to set some rules and to make sure that when a consumer buys a stable coin, the freaking thing doesn't ever move to a price different than $1. It just can't. And they have to reduce the amount of risk that the stable coin issuers are taking, so that term means what the consumer thinks it means. So those are kind of the big areas, regulatory, moving away from financial only products. I think those are some of the big things that we're going to see here in 2023.
Yeah, I think what'll be crucial to watch on the regulatory side of things is, will you be able to get anything passed in Congress with a split between the House and the Senate? But also how reactionary they are to FTX. I think that is going to be really the most important thing, because we saw with Enron how Congress reacted with Sarbanes-Oxley and the after effects of that, and how it's pushed money out of public markets where normal people might have access to companies, and really push those returns back to early private company investors. So hopefully there's not too much on that side, that the second order effects of that aren't considered. But we all know how we tend to act when it comes to regulatory compliance and scrutiny.
Man, at this point, I would rather bad, overly draconian regulations than none. Like, bad, overly draconian regulations can get changed over time to be more workable. None is just too risky, and frankly, it's keeping people out of the markets. There's only a small number of Americans that are willing to participate in these markets without regulatory clarity. So I'd rather bad regulation at this point than none. I'd rather draconian stuff that then the industry can move to try to fight to get back to something more reasonable than no regulation, which is where we are today.
Yeah. You just hope that it doesn't.
I'll take clarity, bad clarity, over nothing at this point. I know not everyone agrees with me on that, but that's my view. not that Congress is asking my opinion, but that's my opinion.
You mean you aren't testifying in front of Congress next week?
No, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that it's on a sliding scale, right? It's on a spectrum, and I to an extent agree with you. But
yeah, I mean, look, anything short of like outright banning all crypto or something like that.
Exactly. Which, I think there's plenty of Congress people out there that might try to push for something like that. But
I saw something that like nearly a third of Congress people took money from FTX. That's a story that's been going around this week. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out there. Look, it may be the SEC providing some guidance. I think they could go a long way towards providing some safe harbors for what makes a token not a security. And that would be a very, very simple thing, to create a safe harbor test, to put that out there. Hopefully, I mean, it's hard to see it happening with Gensler in charge, but hopefully they could do that after, soliciting feedback from the industry, as opposed to just coming out with something. I think there's a shot of something along those lines happening over the course of the calendar year. And I do think we'll see something around crypto custody and stablecoins get through Congress. I think those are big enough issues affecting tens of millions of Americans. They've got to get on that.
And not just Americans, right? The stablecoins provide a great use case for countries outside of America that have to operate on the US dollar as their reserve currency, that don't necessarily have access because of a restrictive government. They can use those stable coins to build businesses abroad.
And the US regulatory has always led the way on this kind of stuff, whether it's, stable coins to me are analogous to money market funds. There's really no difference other than the way you purchase and move them. And so they just need to mirror that. It's so simple, just limit what they can buy to things that are very, very safe and liquid, and limit the way that they're marketed, so that, if you don't sit in the box, you can't call yourself a stable coin. Terra Luna should never have been called a stable coin. It was something totally different. Right. And it's, you can't call something a money market and then go buy risky tech stocks with the cash. It's just not allowed in the United States. And it should be as simple as that. To call yourself a stable coin, to utilize that in your marketing, to have consumers think that that's what they're buying, you have to be in highly liquid, very short term, very safe investments. And it should be no different. It's just, they have a framework for this. Just utilize the same framework that's used for money market funds. They're really no different. It's really just the way they're marketed and the way the cash moves.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
And that framework has survived cycles for, decades, plural. So like, why reinvent it?
Yeah. Are there any other thoughts as we kind of wrap up the episode on what you'd like to see or hope to see this year in the industry?
No, I mean, I think that covers a lot of it. I mean, I guess, the only other thing I'll say is a lot of the things that have gained press and in the Web3 space have been things where it's really tough for the industry to look at a skeptic and say, that could only have been done using blockchain. Even things like whatever, NBA Top Shot or So Rare, like, frankly, those could have been built on their own independent servers. Any of the Web3 games could have just been built on the Epic Games server, the same way those assets are done. So I want to see some stuff this year where it is just absolutely clear cut that not for blockchain, this just wouldn't be possible. At the end of the day, most consumers were fine trusting that something's on an Amazon web server or Microsoft or Google's database or whatever. We don't really care whether it's on the blockchain or in some giant company's server, Chase Manhattan Bank, whatever, right? So like, I want to see some stuff that could only have been built using blockchain technology reach mass scale. That will be a really exciting moment. I get beat up by my skeptic friends all the time. Oh, that could have been done by the company themselves. They didn't need a blockchain. I'm waiting for the time when I can say this one. And I get that there's plenty of things that have been built that way. I mean, this one, which also has 1 million users, or hundreds of thousands of users, that's really reached mass scale, and could not have been built without blockchain technology. That hasn't happened yet, other than in the financial space. I get a decentralized exchange, whatever is what it is. But I mean, something that's not just a pure financial play.
No, that's a beautiful place to leave it. I've enjoyed this. Great to have you back on. Excited to build We Studio with you. And here's to 2023.
Thank you for being a part of what we're doing with We Studio and helping us get the word out here, Zach. It's been great talking to you again. And we're going to have a lot of exciting stuff happening as we announce our first corporate partners, as we start to come back to your audience to talk about what kind of founders we're looking for, what we're looking for in founders. As our founders get live and start building products, man, you got me on the schedule as many times as you want this year. We're going to have a ton of new stuff to share.
Who knows? Maybe we'll have a little micro series for We Studio. I think it's a great idea. Well, thanks again,
Fantastic.
Brian. Cheers, man.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Web3 with me. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you want to connect with me personally, you can find me on Twitter @Zach_French_.